The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger.
How you doing, people? Hope you're okay. This is Red Pill Phil. There's times when you look at what you're doing and you think to yourself, what's the likelihood of success? I mean, you've still got to keep going, but then you think of all the gears and mechanisms that are in front of you. You've got to acknowledge that at least.
This appears the most egregious example of a cover-up involving police collusion.
Time and again, what we've learnt more recently is that a number of police officers investigated Smith up and down the country, and those investigations were quashed, and officers were told to stop investigating him.
I've been following Rochdale for best part of 2 years now, off and on. Very much undermined, very much ignored. All they would like is accountability and some form of resources enabled to help people, survivors that need it, you know. They don't seem to be getting either. So they've took it into their own hands. With the likes of Billy, the likes of Danny and Mike, they think, right, we can do this. We're resilient. We've got initiative. We've got ingenuity. You know, it's just a resource thing. Let's put it out far and wide, try and get people to help, which they do. And you can see it's working. In terms of accountability, we've always said, Alan Brett.
I've been given an indicative list of where it's likely to have, but I'm not releasing it because I'll deny I've said this, and I'm very reluctant to say it even in this room. If we don't do successful in one ward, I might not spend any money in that ward. And you can work that out, but I'll deny I've said it. I will.
Sarah Rebotham.
Right, I told Jackie Bendick the children in her ward were being abused.
Right.
And she did fuck all. The other woman who came out, Lynn Brosnan, she's one of the ones who said to me, we all knew about Cyril Smith. We all knew about Cyril Smith. Everybody knew.
They like to profess that they're doing everything for survivors. They acknowledge survivors and they acknowledge the things that have gone on at Knowlview School, Cambridge House, whether it be relative to Cyril Smith or other members that have played their part in the abuse over the decades in Rochdale.
A striking feature of Smith's case is that many of his victims complained at the time. One who first spoke to police nearly 50 years ago says the lack of action has driven him to speak out publicly.
So then I was stood there naked then towards him. He looked me up and down, and he ran his hands all up and down my thighs and inside my legs and touched my private parts.
As a teenager, Kevin Griffiths lived at Cambridge House, a hostel set up by Smith in Rochdale, supposedly to help boys in need.
It wasn't right. I know it wasn't right, but I couldn't do nothing about it.
Martin Deegan.
My history goes back to around 79, 78 with working for Rochdale Council in education. And I found out in the early 90s that they'd been secretly filing documentation of a serious nature confidentially on children who had been sexually assaulted whilst in the authorities' care. Basically, they didn't want to be sued. But the audacity of not even informing the parents outrages me. And the duplicity that members of staff have shown in that cover-up is a disgrace.
Linda Phillips.
For the people who don't know this area, Linda, how far is the council building from PAG UK HQ now?
Oh, the council building's just that way along, a few hundred yards. The social services was round the corner here where everybody knew what was going on with the kids who were being abused and just all kept quiet because they've got nice cushy jobs. Why should they worry about other people's kids? You know what I mean?
Her son attended Knowlview School. She's been relentless in blowing the whistle. Sarah Rebotham, the sexual health worker that uncovered an abuse scandal that is still really, no one's really got to the full bottom of it, and I can't say all people that were involved have been duly punished.
So do you feel, before the case, obviously we said they're a decade, but obviously I know because of 3 girls and it's been heavily documented in the press, but The warning signs, were they there about sexual grooming? Had you had that experience in your job before this case?
I don't think that sexual exploitation in Rochdale happened just simply because we were there. It was almost kind of given a name, almost even after the court case. I absolutely believe that there were scores of young people before our team existed who were being abused in exactly the same way.
So Sarah come off the back of that and made a name for herself. And I'm sure the lady is doing a lot of stellar work. But the bottom line is Rochdale is missing some acknowledgement. She gets in touch with Danny from Shatterboys. Danny from Shatterboys, through private conversations, Sarah Rebotham is telling more of the story.
Right, okay. They were just as bad as the people behind them. The fucker who sat next to me, both of them. Alan Brett, I just thought, Alan Brett, you've totally misjudged this whole fucking situation. You've taken advice from the chief exec and it's wrong. It's wrong advice. You didn't even acknowledge the people who were sitting in the public gallery at all. And apparently, when we walked out, he started talking about his trip to Pakistan and what a great time he had in Pakistan.
At the same time, acknowledging what's going on, while saying that she will do everything she can to help. We can all see from the evidence that's shown, from the various videos I've shot and from what Danny and Billy have been saying from way before I was covering it. When it comes to the crunch, Sarah Rebotham fell quiet. We've all been perplexed as to why. We've all got many reasons as to why.
People are now asking why so many opportunities were missed to stop Smith. Last year, the Lib Dem leader Nick Clegg said Smith should have been more thoroughly investigated at the time. But the solicitor working with Smith's victims says there are questions to answer.
The victims, with justification, could be saying to the Liberals, hang on a minute, we were abused by your man. What are you going to do about it?
We can blame the council. Of course, the council is negligent in many ways.
Contrary to recent reports you may have seen, we've listened very hard to what victims of abuse say. As the report before you makes clear, we are doing this tonight after meeting and listening to the survivors of abuse.